Welcome back to the Great Rubino. I have a great interview today. Someone from a longevity of people in basketball, Jews in basketball. I'm here with Dan Grunfeld. Dan, how you doing today?
Great, Jeremy. Thanks so much for having me.
So we're doing this the day after Thanksgiving. We shared a little bit of our story. How full are you still from last night's meal?
Probably down to about 60% capacity, so we're slowly ticking down, but it was a good day yesterday.
All right, good. Yes, it was great to be a family, which we're going to talk about your family story today. But first, let's talk just a little bit about you as a player. People are familiar with you. You were All Pac-10 at Stanford in college, went over to play in Europe, mostly in Israel, but also traveled a lot because of your father's position in high school. So take us down the road of sort of the amount of moving you did as a kid, and then to sort of end up at Stanford. Were there any sort of obstacles about the fact that you didn't have sort of like a normal four-year high school at one place, or just always knew that AAU team or something like that? What were some of the obstacles you had in your younger playing days?
Yeah, so growing up, my dad was an NBA executive, and he had a great deal of stability. But even so, that in that industry, you're bound to move around a little bit. So I was born and raised in northern New Jersey, but my freshman year of high school, my dad left the New York Knicks and joined the Milwaukee Bucks. So I did 1 year of high school in New Jersey, and then my final 3 years in Milwaukee. And so yeah, moved around a little bit. It was cool to kind of see different parts of the country, get different experiences. Honestly, I'm not sure if I get to Stanford if I stay in New Jersey, because that's where I always wanted to go. And moving to Milwaukee, it kind of tightened the screws on my discipline. The basketball was really good there, and so everything happens for a reason. But got to Stanford, had a nice career there, and then, as you said, played 8 years professionally all over the world. Last 4 years of my career in Israel.
Did you? And I don't know this, and I couldn't find it. Did you play at Nicolay High School?
That's right.
It's a historic school, and a lot of friends that I have live in that area in Glendale. So, or their parents do. So, in a powerhouse high school in terms of like who they produced some great players over the years. And so then Stanford, great experience. And what made you want to go over to Europe and specifically Israel to play?
As a basketball player, I wanted to continue my career professionally. And my opportunity to do that was overseas, and so played my first year in Germany, next 3 years in Spain. While I was playing in Spain, I had the opportunity to play in the Maccabea games. That was in 2009. Bruce Pearl of Auburn was our coach, and had an amazing experience there. We won the gold medal, and I had never been to Israel. So as a Jewish American, my dad's an immigrant from Romania. They were bound for Israel before at the last minute they came to the United States. So most of our family ended up in Israel. It was really a profound experience to be there for the first time. And I remember telling my sister while we were in Israel, because my family came to watch, I said, when my contract in Spain is done, I'm coming here. And that's exactly what I did. It was just, for so many reasons, on the basketball side, on the personal side, it was very meaningful.
So we talked a little bit about your father, and for those who don't know, Ernie was an NBA executive. Also played in the NBA. I believe, he's the only Jewish player who's played on an American Olympic team for basketball. I'm not positive about that, but I'm pretty certain. And then, and if it happened before, it happened way before him. But also retired his college jersey. So it had a really great career. And what I see from players, second generation, is they either really reject what mom or dad are doing or really embrace it. Obviously embraced it. So what did that mean? What is that relationship like with your father when it comes to basketball? And how did you guys bond over that?
Yeah, I mean, my dad was awesome. My mom too. They never forced basketball on me. It was what my dad did, but my parents always told me, discover what you like, try new things. But I liked basketball. What kid doesn't want to be like his dad? And so we really just always bonded over the game. I mean, when I was growing up, he was the general manager of the New York Knicks, and my weekends were spent at practice with him, watching the players, shooting around with them. And it just gives you a great love of the game, knowledge and understanding. He really tried to like impart his wisdom upon me, which was always so helpful. And even to this day, it's something we bond over. We watch games together. We talk about the previous night's games. And so, yeah, it's been a great gift for our family.
Yeah, wonderful. So, and anything that he really told you as an NBA executive that sort of helped your career, at least play in Europe, that you want to share with people, or maybe not share? You want to keep it to yourself? I don't know.
Yeah, well, no, everything. I mean, it's such a benefit to me. I had such an advantage because I would go through, playing professional basketball is hard, and there's always be these complex situations, whether it was with my coach or with a teammate. And I would always call my dad and describe the situation, and he would just have a great perspective. Usually, if I could like synthesize his advice amounted to something along the lines of keep working, keep being a great teammate. Because I would get frustrated, and and we would talk things out, and he would always kind of keep me positive, say, keep working, keep being a great teammate. And so, yeah, I mean, again, it's such an advantage to have someone so close to you who'd been through it. Not only had he as a player, but then as an executive, so he'd seen both sides of it. So I for sure benefited from that.
So one of the things we're really here to talk about is this new book by the Grace of the Game, which really is talking, we're just talking about the footsteps of your father, but really also the shadow of your entire family. Why don't you share a little bit about what the book's about and why you're putting it out there to the world?
Absolutely. So my dad is the only player in NBA history whose parents survived the Holocaust. So both of my grandparents are survivors. My grandmother, who you'll be happy to know is 96 years old, lives in the Bay Area, 25 minutes from me and my wife, doing amazing. She has a fairly big Holocaust survival story. So she was saved twice by Swedish diplomat Raoul Wallenberg, who's considered one of the greatest heroes of the Holocaust. And so growing up, I just always had this sense of what basketball had done for my family, and how profound the game has been in our lives. My dad came to America as an immigrant from communist Romania, having never touched a basketball, not speaking a word of English. And then roughly 10 years later, he's standing on the podium as a gold medalist for the United States. So it really is an American dream story. And it's a story that I always dreamed of telling. And so it took me more than 5 years to write it, but it's coming out, next week, and Tuesday, November 30th. And so couldn't be more excited about it.
What's sort of the biggest takeaway you want people to know about this story and its significant role it's played, I guess, in the NBA and not just your family, but anyone who's sort of come in contact? I mean, I think one of the things when you meet survivors, or certainly children of survivors, you can't remove that part of their lives. It's just ingrained in everything that they do, from the way they eat to the way they interact to even the way they pray or don't pray. A lot of it is in reflection of the horrors of Germany in the late 1930s, early 40s.
Without a doubt. I tell people it wasn't that long ago and it wasn't that far away, and it does impact subsequent generations, my own included. And so the story, there's some very hard things in the story. My grandmother lost 7 immediate family members in the Holocaust. That's both parents and 5 siblings. My grandfather lost everyone. So my dad never had grandparents. There's a lot of real sadness and sorrow to the story, but ultimately it's a story of hope, right? Because you kind of understand the power of the human spirit, and what perseverance looks like, and how do you overcome obstacles, stay positive, stay hopeful, and ultimately live full, happy lives. And that's what my family has been able to do. Basketball was a big part of that. But I tell folks, even before my dad found basketball in New York City, my family was living the American dream, because they fled communism in Romania after surviving the Holocaust, and they got to America and they had freedom and they had opportunity. So it was already the American dream, but basketball kind of just amplified that.
Yeah, it's funny. Last night at Thanksgiving, a conversation came up with my grandfather, who's also 96, as we say in Yiddish, Kenahora. And
yeah, very much so.
So he told me that he had no idea how his grandmother died. And I thought that was such a bizarre concept that he just doesn't know. He barely knew her at all, and no recollection and no story of that. And I think today, where we all are, and to think what America's opened up for so many people for so long, and of course, like anywhere, any organization, any country, any company, it's not without flaw. But if you put it on the grand scheme of what we're about as human beings, the opportunity to overcome such chaos and sadness is paramount. And it sounds like the story that you're telling is very much that you can live in a world where you don't take for granted that you know your grandparents and love them and share with them and have opportunity to grow and write and share your stories.
Yeah, without a doubt. Every parent, every grandparent, you want the future generation to have it better than you did. And I've benefited from that. I certainly have it better than my dad and he had it better than his parents, and so that's kind of what you want. And certainly like America in our story has played a big part. And to your point, it's not perfect. There are a lot of problems, but at the same time, it was where my family was able to come to have the freedom that they'd been denied for so long.
Yeah. So I also, on the book, the foreword's written by Ray Allen, who we talked a little bit about before, who wrote an incredible piece. And this is how I sort of connected him to the book, but you have obviously a close connection with him, that he visited Auschwitz and wrote a piece about it in the Player Tribune, which for those who don't know what the Player Tribune is, please read the Players Tribune. It's an amazing publication and they do great work. And Ray Allen's story is one of the most important Jewish stories, even though he's obviously not Jewish, to be told. So why Ray Allen and writing the foreword, besides that he's a name, and what was that experience like learning about his experience?
Yeah. So I'm lucky to know Ray because my dad was the general manager of the Milwaukee Bucks when Ray was a young star player there. And so since I was 15 years old, I've known Ray. And I tell people, for as great of a basketball player as he was, and he's one of the top 75 players in NBA history, he's a better human being. I mean, he's just someone I've always admired so much on and off the court. The Holocaust education, Holocaust remembrance has been his passion. I mean, he saw Schindler's List in college. It really moved him. I think his perspective was, this is not just a Jewish tragedy, this is a human tragedy, and we all need to know about it. And so every time his team played in DC, he would take teammates to the Holocaust Museum. As you said, he took trips to Auschwitz. And so he lives it. I mean, he really has made it, a mission of his to educate people on the Holocaust so it never happens again to anybody, not just Jews, to anybody. And so having him stand by me, my family's story, was so meaningful. It was, it's really such a great act of friendship, generosity, and like I'll always be grateful to him for that. And I think it's just very powerful. Like his example of what allyship looks like is just something we can all kind of learn from.
Absolutely. Where can people get the book and find out more about it?
Absolutely. So available everywhere books are sold. Amazon, we're trying to support local bookstores. But yeah, anywhere you get your books, by the grace of the game, will be there.
Great. Well, Dan, thank you so much for sharing your story and the book. People should go out and get it, read it. Obviously, it's an incredible story, an important story that we need more people telling angles about this as our kids become further and further away from survivors. And there's less and less of them, and very soon there'll be none of them, just in terms of time, that we are responsible. Our generation, Dan, is responsible for ensuring that these things never happen again, not only to Jews, but to anyone. And thank you for coming on and sharing with us.
You got it. No, I'm grateful and I really appreciate it.